good. That would be terrible, I agree. Now that everybody's energized, we're going to talk about innovation and technology translation to practice. And we have 3 speakers that do this every single day. Kate Turpin is with SERA Architects. They do high-performance building projects. She is a mechanical engineer in an architectural firm. She serves as co-chair for the Cascadia Green Building Council's Portland branch, and she's an adjunct professor in the University of Oregon. Then we're going to hear a company, a global company, actually doing this and setting a lot of the movement that we will have. Anthony Ravitz, who's global head of the green team for Google. And then Chris Pyke, I'm sure 90% of this room knows who Chris is. He's probably more than that. He's vice president of research for U.S. Green Building Council. And since we all know who he is, I'm not going to tell you anything else. Kate, go ahead.
Just that one. Okay, great. Thank you. No red button. So now everybody's awake. This is great. I'm not in the lunch lull. So today I'm going to talk about work that I've been very privileged to do, tremendous privilege of working with Google to develop indoor environmental quality design guidance for Google's new construction and renovation projects. And my role really is to work with and coordinate a group of experts in IAQ, which we sometimes like to refer to as celebrity panelists, which includes Charlene, who have really put together the metrics that we're looking at. And what we're really trying to work on is developing performance-based design and construction requirements for Google's office spaces. And Anthony, who will follow me, will talk more about the broader sense. Many of you have heard, and I'm sure are eager to hear more about Google's approach to healthy workplaces, which is, there's a lot of aspects to it. And what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit more narrow into the indoor environmental quality parameters. So what do I mean by indoor environmental quality? So again, we're emphasizing performance-based. We're looking for measurable outcomes, not just prescriptive strategies. The core drivers behind this are promoting health and well-being and creating exceptional and responsive workplace experience, and meeting these core objectives with a conscious and deliberate commitment to sustainability. So these are core drivers for Google's efforts around developing these requirements for their projects. And so Google has developed its own set of criteria to help project teams optimize their project's performance in indoor environmental quality. And these benchmarks promote workplaces with abundant natural light in the form of daylighting, electrical lighting that's visually pleasant and free of glare, comfortable thermal and acoustic environments, the highest levels of indoor air quality, and biophilia, connection to nature. So I won't spend much time here because it's been so well covered today, it's good to hear that people are kind of aware of some of the disconnects. But from our perspective in a design firm, there's a very known cycle that's kind of understood in terms of energy. So we have a good understanding of how to set performance targets of where we want to, what kind of outcomes we want to achieve, and have that drive design strategies. We know how to talk to owners about it. We know how to talk about costs, first cost investments, life cycle cost impacts. Around indoor environmental quality and health, we don't have those metrics, and a lot of other people have made that point today, but we're just trying to form this cycle. And there's some real challenges. As we all know, there's a lack of clear metrics and performance criteria that designers can apply directly. There's poor connections between health outcomes and design and operational strategies, what we're all here talking about today. Also, the industry standards that govern a lot of these areas are often far behind the cutting-edge research. So there's the poor movement of academic research into implementation and practice. So that leaves designers in a bit of a fix. So some of us find out or have the opportunity to be exposed to some of the new knowledge and research, but it's not widespread in the industry right now. And then many of you have seen this. It's amazing that we have this disconnect when we understand that salaries and benefits are about 86% of a typical office operating costs, and utilities costs are under 2%. So there's great financial reasons to do this above just trying to create the kind of workplace culture that you might strive for. So Google's IAQ vision is really around creating extraordinary human experience in the workplace by providing an interior environment that is rich, variable, and multisensory, that makes the people that work there feel engaged, alive, and comfortable, and that promotes health and well-being. So how are we doing this in the realm of indoor environmental quality? So again, with limited time, I won't be able to go into the many performance metrics we have. We have about 40 different design criteria that we're putting out for Google's large new construction projects. In indoor air quality, we start with healthy material selection. Google has a very robust process around requirements for teams in product transparency, so understanding what's in the building materials that are specified and used in their projects, and eliminating toxics to the greatest extent possible. Something that we're doing that is not commonly done in the industry is trying to understand where we should be in terms of performance outcomes on pollutants. So we've developed, and working with Charlene and a panel of indoor air quality experts, pollutant threshold limits for about 22 known high priority pollutants that have known health impacts, as well as a few indicator compounds, and an additional 35 compounds that have medium, we categorize as medium to low priority because they don't have as clear of a connection to health risks and they're not very common to find in commercial buildings. But the idea is to aggressively monitor these over time to collect data on the actual performance of spaces and create the feedback mechanisms that we need to inform design and operational strategies. Right now, even though we know about some exposure limits that have health impacts, we don't actually know how to connect those to specific design and operational strategies beyond just don't put toxics in your building. Let's get a little bit more refined in how can we really understand how to influence design in more holistic ways. So around thermal comfort, we all think of air temperature. Thermal comfort is a pretty big, important aspect of your workplace experience, and it's not just air temperature. There's also humidity, there's air speed, there's radiant temperature. There's a huge effect from the surface temperatures that are around you. Your ability to control all of those variables. And then, of course, everybody's different. Look around the room. People are wearing different things. Trying to provide kind of a static environment that pleases everyone is difficult. We have different metabolic rates. And as a building industry, and as Charlene told you, I'm an engineer, our established standards are geared to be static, fixed thermal conditions. It's comfort as defined by engineers. Yikes. So what we hope to do is move more towards subtle changes and variability that can bring a sense of dynamism, can be stimulating, can bring a sense of delight. And so those are things that we're looking to pilot and learn more about. Around daylighting and electric lighting, this classroom, higher ed classroom, is an example of the kind of environment that we're trying to create. This could also be for office spaces, but you notice the electric lights are off. There's exterior shading that blocks direct sun, so it's controlling glare. There's interior light shades that bounce daylight deeper into the space. There's a sense of evenness, so you have good kind of low contrast ratios between the work surfaces and the ceiling, between the work plane and the wall surfaces, and this all creates a sense of visual comfort. So putting these pieces into metrics that designers can then use to understand if they're creating spaces that are going to be comfortable to work in. And then, of course, in the sense of daylighting, you've got a huge win-win in that this also saves energy. You don't have electric lighting. Those exterior shades are blocking a lot of the sun that would be causing cooling, so there's just a lot of great reasons to do this. And then we know that is an area where we do have some good metrics around increased performance of students in daylit spaces. Acoustics in office environments it's interesting. It doesn't get much attention right now in the greater standards, even the green building standards. And yet it's generally one of the most significant areas of worker dissatisfaction, particularly in open office environments. And in a place like Google, where you're really trying to promote collaboration and teaming, and there's a lot of ways to do that, and a lot of it is through different types of spaces and promoting interaction and movement. There's also a sense of promoting a buzz in the actual workspace. So you want people to sometimes be able to overhear some conversations and get involved, and that's a way of learning what your coworkers are doing and kind of opportunities to participate more. On the other hand, you don't want that to become distracting. So what are the right levels of that? How do you balance speech privacy with the need for collaboration? And then biophilia. So this is really designing to inspire and promote humans' innate affinity for nature. So we talk about this in design a lot. What we're trying to do is start to apply metrics to it that designers can use to understand if their spaces are performing and meeting targets. So we're looking for design attributes that give us measurable criteria and reduce stress levels, faster healing rates, improve creativity and focus. But how do we break that down for designers? So the work of Turpin, Bright Green on this to develop metrics around nature in the space. So what's the right level or a good level to target for visual connection with nature versus physical connection? How do you get people physically connecting to natural spaces? We also have metrics that we're working on for piloting for non-rhythmic sensory stimuli. So trying to create these sense of movement, and how often should that happen? How often should you be exposed? That actually creates positive performance outcomes. Also nature of the space, so looking at biomorphic forms and patterns. So there's a number of different areas there in biophilia. So how are we going to go about doing all of this? So the idea is to really launch and iterate, so to focus again on performance outcomes, measure physical parameters, so in the buildings that are constructed using these standards, measure the physical parameters robustly, assess Googler experience through surveys, and create feedback loops, both for corrective action plans to tune operational performance in spaces that are already constructed, as well as to feedback into design and refine strategies to establish process improvements. And so when we think about a rollout plan, we started with thinking big. We wanted to dream big, think about the projects that have the most ability to impact change, which are large new construction projects. Everything's open to them. Their siting, their orientation, their massing. So we developed our initial list of indoor environmental quality criteria for these large new construction projects. But we also have to consider smaller refresh projects. What about those projects that are really only touching finishes and furnishings? So through that, we're kind of filtering through which systems are impacted, what performance criteria do we expect a project to achieve based on the scope of their project. And then we're starting small in that sense, because these large new construction projects, while they can do the most, it's years before we get any meaningful data back. The design, project conception into design, construction into occupancy is a multiple year cycle before we're going to get any measurable data back on the performance outcomes. But there's a lot of refresh in small projects that happen. They go on quick time cycles. And so we have the opportunity to pilot specific things on those projects and learn from them and refine these strategies as we go. I'm done. So that's it for me. And just wanted to note this, the panel that developed these standards. So, thank you.